Welcome to Celebration MK10, a world where the desert is blue, the dungeon is pink, underground cabins glow rainbow, and deaths look like this. Now you may be wondering, Jonah, didn't you specifically say at the end of your last Terraria video that you weren't going to make a part 3 to this? To that I say, I don't know what you're talking about. In all seriousness, I wasn't planning on making a part 3 to this series, but two things changed my mind. The first ties back to what I said at the end of my last video, which is that I never tire of Terraria. No matter how many times I replay it, I always get something new and interesting out of the whole experience. The game is constantly getting updated since 1.4 released, and even after I finished recording the series, more updates have come out with the Ether biome and the Shimmer stuff. When the last video came out, there were only 4 secret world seeds. Now there's double that amount. Guess I've got some work to do. The second thing that happened was that, well, I started streaming on Twitch. I've been going nearly every day for the past few months just as a bit of celebration for graduating college, and playing Terraria became my everyday Tuesday routine. Anyways, now that I was playing Terraria again, it was time to start another hardcore run. And as usual, we'll be starting with a new secret world seed. My plan with this series is to progressively play harder seeds until it gets too hard for me to handle. So, through a bit of research into the topic, I decided that the Celebration seed would be the next easiest seed to go through. Also, once again keep in mind that I'm a filthy casual, so I still play on classic mode over expert. Stay tuned for an expert mode run later though. Compared to a lot of the other secret world seeds, the Celebration world doesn't actually have too many noteworthy changes to its gameplay. A lot of the changes are visual and just look silly. However, there are a couple of noteworthy changes to discuss. Probably the one that surprised me the most, all items found in chests have the best modifiers they can have on them. Okay, well, most of them do. Fucking spear. That means for things like weapons, you get modifiers like godly, ruthless, unreal, mythical, and so on. Meanwhile, accessories always have one of the +4 modifiers, lucky for crit strike, menacing for damage, quick for movement speed, and warding for defense. As you might have guessed, this makes things great for early game chests when you're trying to get through the world as fast as possible. Remember how the Drunk world had more living wood trees than a typical world? Well, what if Celebration worlds had more than that? Then there's the start of the run, which drops you into the overworld with 4 NPCs, which means an instant town where no enemies can spawn and instant selling. And one of those NPCs happens to be the princess, who, if you get far enough in the game, will sell you super rare items like the Terragram or the Sandstorm in a bottle. Of course, I never actually took advantage of that because I'm an idiot, but hey, it's there. Not every change is good. For example, the world drops you off at the ocean for some reason. There are some boulder traps that are bouncy and therefore harder to avoid. And finally, a lot of the bosses are a different size from usual. Most of them are specifically smaller, which you can probably guess the problem with that. Anyways, enough about the changes. You're probably just saying, get on with it already, I wanna see the chaos! Guys, I don't know how to tell you this, but there was really only one noteworthy run during this challenge, and that run ended up being the last run of the challenge. Every single run that came before it died pre-hard mode, and the only run that made it to hard mode made it all the way. So as much as I hate to say it, there's really not too much to talk about regarding my story or any interesting runs. So to compensate, let's just quickly go over each run that failed and talk about something interesting that happened with each of them. Starting off with Koopa Troopa. His accomplishment is that he exclaimed that he could die from falling damage, and immediately proceeded to jump off a tree to his death. Then there's Bianca. She wins the award for being the first run to start from the right side, only to run into a Crimson and die before she could do literally anything. How about Pauline, who had a run so uneventful that the literal only highlight was her inevitable death. Then there was Samus, who was the first to find not 1, but 2 enchanted sword shrines. You heard me right, first run to find multiple sword shrines. She died because of underground desert shenanigans. Of course, Minecraft Steve got plenty of highlights, including a living wood made inside of the dungeon, the first encounter with a golden slime, 8 wands of sparkings, the first to encounter the rainbow house, and the first to actually kill any bosses. He would die in the stronghold, dungeon. Chell would also fight a boss. She also found a life crystal replacing a boulder outright. See something new every day, I guess. Ironically, Chell would also die of fall damage, something she's otherwise incapable of doing in canon. Charmander's world was so egregious that I was outright thankful that I died to a bouncy boulder trap. And finally, Ryuji's world was also really bad, but after an incredible mining mission, I managed to completely flip the script and I got a legitimate run going. Of course, it didn't last due to my old friend, the dynamite trap. Honestly, I'm surprised it took me this long. And that concludes Failed Runs, the series, only on Nickelodeon. Of course, just because I don't have much to say about the failed runs didn't mean there weren't things I wasn't starting to understand from a general sense. I think I can confidently say that despite all the failure, Celebration Worlds are probably the best world for early game. The modifiers on accessories on top of the constant living wood trees allow for extremely manageable early game defense, and getting the bars and armor has never been easier. Now, granted, the seed isn't perfect, with the ocean spawn being the real big drawback. Exploring the world from one side to the other was now super long, so navigating it is really frustrating. My original solution was to find the conch shell in the desert, which, well, you saw how that went. However, I quickly realized that pylons were the way to go. They were really easy to grab, and making a base in the center of the world effectively took away the navigation challenge. Still though, the start of the game being in the ocean isn't great. It basically turns the world into a coin flip, where if you spawn on the same side as the jungle, the world is basically fucked, because what room do you really have to work with? So imagine my surprise when the run that made it to the end started on the jungle side of the world. The character of the run was Valid from Ocarina of Time. Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting her to be the hero of all the characters, but that's just how it happens sometimes. The jungle had luckily come with a living wood tree, allowing for some basic shelter and a bit of protection from jungle enemies. With some defensive accessories, careful potion usage, and good weapon finds, I was able to make it through the jungle without too many close calls. Of course, though, it was nighttime, and I was also now stuck on the right side of the jungle with no easy way to get back. I find a pyramid with a sandstorm in a bottle, and after a bit more traversing, I find the next obstacle in the Crimson. By this point, I've made it about halfway through the world, so I needed to find a good place to set my midpoint house. But with the Crimson right next door to a living wood tree spawn, there really wasn't much room to work with. I still settled on a spot right next to the tree, but the Crimson was a very close neighbor. I guess we'll keep an eye on that. When I reached the dungeon on the right side of the map, there's a living wood tree that left a wide open pit right into its depths. A gnome showed up and tried to kindly nudge me to my death, but he was properly punished, and I lived to see another day. Not too long after that, I find not one, but 2 enchanted sword shrines. And all of a sudden, my run was set up perfectly. I had a strong early game weapon, and after a mining mission, had full tier 4 armor and solid health. At this point, I only had one weakness, one I continued to emphasize throughout the early game: fall damage. Luckily for me, I had not 1, but 2 double jumps, and I also had an umbrella to help slow my fall. With those, I was able to remedy my situation and work around the big jumps for the most part, but that didn't mean I didn't almost die to falling damage anyways. I then took on the Brain and Skeletron back to back. This is where it became really apparent how bad small bosses are. Their hitboxes being so tiny made landing hits on them so frustrating. It didn't ultimately factor in my victory, but it is worth noting another downside of Celebration Worlds in later stages. Because trust me, this problem isn't going away anytime soon. Even after digging a elevator, I found myself still susceptible to falling, so I used a gravitation potion to try to get fledgling wings. And in my first attempt, I found nothing. Literally nothing. No sky houses, no sky lakes, literally nothing. Seriously, this was the last thing standing in my way from a guaranteed hard mode at this point, and I was getting completely denied over and over. Ah well, I guess I'll return back to my mid-world base and... oh. That could be a problem. Yeah, even without being in a hard mode, my Crimson seems to be fully set on attacking my base. In my previous videos, I used to make a big deal about the evil biome spreads, going as far to dig elevators at each end of each evil biome, and digging an underground path underneath to fully contain them. This time around though, I felt like doing that would only take up far more time than I wanted to spend in pre-hard mode, so I planned to just deal with the spread of hard mode the natural way. Well, I was certainly letting that bite me in the ass right away, wasn't I? Still, I had a decision. Did I go back to my old strategy of digging around the Crimson just to contain it, or do I just let it go and hope for the best? I opted for the latter, choosing to just use purifying powder to bring the Crimson back a couple of blocks, and digging a hole that would hopefully slow down its overworld spread progress. Anyhow, after I went through the dungeon, I used one last gravitation potion for one last chance at the fledgling wings, and I got a lucky horseshoe? Yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but as of the 1.4.4 update, the lucky horseshoe is back up on the sky houses, and the fledgling wings are now extremely rare. Either way, I'm not complaining. I finally solved the last major weakness I had before hard mode. The wall of flesh was no problem as usual, and the first hard mode celebration run has begun. After waiting until daytime to start my mining mission, I nearly died to about 100 wraiths while destroying the altars. As for the mining mission, I kid you not when I say I killed it down there. The entire mission took around 20 minutes to get full tier 3 hard mode armor and weapons. Pro tip, bring spelunker potions, obsidian skin potions, iron skin potions, and your crafting stations with you for the hard mode mining. It speeds things up tremendously. That's when I discovered that my Hallow biome was bad. Like, really bad. No forest was infected. It was only the desert and the snow biomes that were hallowed. The good news was that I had absolutely no intention of going for the hallowed key this time around. That rainbow gun is, frankly, not worth it. Speaking of the keys, this is about the time where I'd go searching for the keys while waiting for the bosses to spawn naturally on their own. Of course, now that I was more experienced with these kinds of runs, I felt far more comfortable summoning the bosses early, but it still wouldn't hurt to hunt a bit in the downtime, like during daytime when a boss couldn't be summoned. Besides, it's the vampire knives. I'm not turning those things down if I can't help it. Still, after what happened in the last several runs, I figured that the less key hunting I do, the better. So for this run, I restricted myself to only the Crimson Key and maybe the Desert Key if I could somehow snag it. But first, I needed to upgrade my weapons. The Onyx Blaster is a favorite of mine, so after corrupting another ocean biome, I collected my 2 dark shards for the gun, and where did my entire set of equipment go? One second I was fighting mummies, and the next I'm completely naked and defenseless. How the hell did I even survive over there with no armor? And more importantly, where did my stuff go? It was nowhere in the ocean, so where the fuck was it? According to the recording, it just vanished into thin air. All of a sudden, I was left completely defenseless. All of my equipment and movement buffs were deleted in a second, and I was left bare in hard mode. What the hell was I going to do? Actually, as it turns out, I had just accidentally clicked on one of the other layouts. Whoops! Bad timing to discover these things exist, huh? Oh, and by the way, the reason why the screen looks cut off was because I was playing on a windowed version of the game. Basically, I was having trouble getting the recording to look right on full screen, in case you were wondering. Anyway, with that crisis averted, I sloppily got the Souls of Night and got my gun. Everything was set for me to take on the mechanical bosses. As usual, I wanted to get Prime out of the way first. It wasn't much of a problem this time around, but really only because my nurse usage was so frequent. The next night, I double up and defeat Prime again, followed by the Destroyer. And despite a close call, my flamethrower incinerated it, which left me only the twins away from a Plantera showdown. All I needed to do was use my twin summoner. If I had one! Somehow, I'd managed to go the entire run up to this point with absolutely no lenses. And also, 1 black lens. Oh, that's nice. Of course, that meant that I'd need to start spending my nights killing eyes. But would you believe that this took me multiple nights to accomplish? Regardless, before I did any of that, I had my typical rematch with the Destroyer. But what should have been a rather straightforward fight was anything but. She's almost dead. Oh, no. I can't have that. I cannot have that. The nurse almost just died, and I probably would have died with her. Our lives are codependent, Miss Nurse. No, why? Shit, 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 shit. Fucking destroyer. The nurse is killed! Okay, we'll keep a very careful eye out on our health. This is a disaster. The fucking demolitionist actually could have killed us. Might have killed us. It's not gonna kill us. I have the panic button. But I'm definitely using the rest of my potions here. Okay, or good. You deserve to die for that demolitionist. You killed my healing source. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. Oh, we killed it. Okay. Whew! Yep, the fucking destroyer killed the nurse during that fight. Let's forget about the fact that the demolitionist completely cock-blocked my access to the nurse during that fight, and let's just talk about the fact that the nurse dying was nearly my death. Don't forget how important the nurse's heals are during these fights, as without it, I could literally lose a run at any boss. Exhibit A. I don't have money! No! Fuck! Anyways, after 2 nights of killing enemies in the Crimson and Desert, I finally get enough lenses to fight the twins. When I summon them, the plan was to switch up my order of who I defeat first. Normally I defeat Spasmatism first to get it out of the way, and then defeat Retinazer since it's way easier. However, my thoughts this time around were that if I defeated Retinazer first, then I can defeat Spasmatism without having to worry about anything else at the same time. Unfortunately, this just left me with way more time with Spaz, even if it was only its first form. Still, I committed to the strategy, and while it worked out in the end, I still think it was one of my smaller brain plays. Now it's your standard underground jungle hunt for the life fruits and chlorophyte. As usual, this took forever, which meant that I spent a long time under a spelunker potion digging endlessly in the underground jungle. I also nearly died to a jungle mimic, an enemy exclusive to Secret World seeds like Celebration. Speaking of those jungle mimics, the next time I encountered one, I actually killed it, only to find the incredibly gimmicky prizes inside. Holy shit, what the fuck is all this? What the fuck? Jesus Christ, what the hell is all this? Oh my god, that's the pee. Jesus, this is just a toilet. This is just straight up a toilet. Oh my god, I'm getting trolled. Not gonna lie, I'm not feeling the celebration on this one. Anyways, I defeated one more jungle mimic before finishing the life fruit hunt. From here, it was a question of whether I defeat Plantera or get the Crimson Key. I chose the Crimson Key before things got too hard in the overworld. That night, a blood moon spawned, and amidst the enemy killing, I found this. Lilith's necklace. The power of the wolf? Oh, I am a fucking wolf. What the shit? I am just a straight up wolf right now. What? Okay. What the hell? Look at me. I'm using can I use guns? Bruh. The next day was a solar eclipse, and the increased spawn rate landed me the Crimson Key. And after a stop at the desert for a brief desert key hunt... Wait, hold on. I'm a peeing wolf? Lol. It was at that point that I decided to take on Plantera. That, of course, meant finding a Plantera bulb somewhere in the underground jungle. Eventually, I found one near a jungle mimic. The next thing was to make a battlefield for the Plantera fight, so I defeated a jungle mimic and worked to create one. After defeating a jungle mimic, everything was all set to fight Plantera. Unlike the other bosses thus far, Plantera was bigger than normal, which, you know, only made an easy boss that much easier. Especially when I peed on it as a wolf. Hey, it's a plant, this is good for it. Going through the dungeon for the vampire knives was uneventful, so now I just had to go through the jungle temple. And almost instantly, things go very wrong. Otherwise, we are okay. Okay, again. Okay, I can stop doing things like this now. That would be pretty cool. What am I getting hit by? What am I getting hit by? What happened? I don't even know what happened there. Oh, fucker. This is gonna be way harder than I thought. These traps are brutal, man. A jungle mimic showed up and filled my inventory with complete junk. So, that was fun. After falling victim to another trap I couldn't see and also fighting a jungle mimic? Huh, that's weird. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I finally found the golem boss area. Also another jungle mimic. As usual, Golem was a pushover. This time around, I wasn't even somewhat concerned with my death, and I took him on 8 total times, 1 for each bond of sparking that I found during the Minecraft Steve run. At this point, I can manually summon the Solar Eclipse to get the Broken Hero Sword, an item for the Terra Blade. So I did so in the desert to get access to it, and I managed to get both the item and the desert key. So say hello to the tiger, who went unnamed this time around. Feel free to give it a name in the comments. Of course, getting the Broken Hero Sword also meant getting the Terra Blade, only I was missing some key items. Most notably, I didn't have enough Souls of Sight. You know, the item you get from the twins. Remember how I didn't have enough materials to make the boss summoning item earlier? Well, not only did I have to hunt for them again, but then I also had to fight the boss again, both of which I'd have to wait until nighttime to do. Combined with the fact that I also didn't have enough Souls of Light to make the summoner item, which meant that I would need to do more hunting in the underground hello, and no, this ain't happening. I have my vampire knives, and you know what? That's enough for me. So, no Terra Blade for me this time around. But if I can't have a good weapon, I'll at least have good defense, which I didn't really have up to this point. That meant that killing turtles to get their shells. First, I tried going underground and... oh, hello there. Anyways, I get the beetle armor and some much needed defense. When I fought the lunatic cultist, I noticed that I was really bad at finding the fake cultist during the phases where it summons things. So much so to the point where I actually saw the Ancient Vision, an entity I'd never seen before in my life. It only spawns if the Phantasm Dragon is still alive and the cultist tries to summon another enemy. It's a good thing that I happen to have the best vampire daggers possible and can live forever with these things. Seriously guys, several times during hard mode, I reached the conclusion that a victory on this seed was a foregone conclusion. I never made it this far and lost. Okay, well, I'd never made it this far, had a lot of money for the nurse, and also lost. I don't have money! Fuck! Still though, here I was in familiar territory. I knew the drill. There wasn't going to be any kind of surprise with these last few steps to the Moon Lord. If you watched the last video, you already know the drill too. Save the Nebula pillar for last, kill the other pillars and get the best items from them. Familiar enemies on the easiest difficulty with the easiest possible world seed. This should be simple. This should be an easy win. The first pillar was a gift. The solar pillar spawned at the top of a living wood tree, greatly decreasing the kinds of enemies that could reach where I was. The hardest pillar was quickly taken care of and out of the way. Victory was in my sights. The next pillar, the vortex pillar, was far more difficult. I was using vampire knives, but I was still taking a ton of damage. I took some potions to bulk and heal up, but it didn't really seem to be helping. In particular, I really wasn't paying attention to these enemies, who had some kind of shotgun. But it's alright, I just need to warp out and... What?! Oh my god.